From falling off the edge of the screen to being peppered with a bombardment of bullets, death and video games have always gone hand in hand. However, in the world of role-playing titles where actions have consequences and storylines are designed to pack a punch, deaths can become much more gut-wrenching. Script writing is one of the most underrated parts of making a memorable title, but video game developers have consistently shown they know how to make an impactful demise for some of their best characters. So when it comes to seeing these characters meeting their maker, it's hard not to feel like an old family friend is saying their farewells, especially when that demise comes out of the blue in the most thespian of circumstances. Of course, spoilers are ahead, so beware. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 devastating RPG deaths that came out of nowhere. Number 10. Blackbeard, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Edward Thatch is probably the most infamous name associated with the golden age of piracy, and his inclusion in Assassin's Creed Black Flag helped make the game the colorful experience it was. In the game, Blackbeard is shown to be one of the most outlandish but also layered pirates Edward Kenway works with. The game does a wonderful job of highlighting parts of Thatch's persona that typical history books skip out on. He shows how his theatrics are a means of avoiding conflict and acts as Edward's chief mentor throughout the first half of the game's story. So whilst Blackbeard is a historical figure whose demise is a well-told part of his tale, his actual death in-game is still a shocking one to play through. Following his retirement party, Blackbeard and Kenway are ambushed by the Royal Navy. The fight leads both pirates to the flagship man-of-war, where Thatch is soon overwhelmed and subjected to a bloody death at the hands of the British. Players are utterly helpless and are made to watch a fitting end to a legendary pirate, with Blackbeard's line, "In a world without gold we might have been heroes," going down as one of the greatest final lines in gaming. Number 9. Mirabelle Irvine, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. When players muster up the energy to trek up to Winterhold for the College of Winterhold storyline in Skyrim, they'll meet a Breton mage called Mirabelle Irvine. Mirabelle is the college's master wizard and acts as the bridge between the Archmage and the students. She gives players a tour of the grounds when they first arrive and is shown to be a competent mage, as well as a knowledgeable and brave member of the college, making her one of the few colourful characters present in the storyline. None of the guild leaders that kick off the game make it to the end of their quest lines alive, but usually the characters around them are able to make it through unscathed. That's what makes Mirabelle's death so shocking. After returning from Labyrinthian following the Staff of Magnus quest, players are told by Tolfdir that Mirabelle had sacrificed herself in order to ensure the other students were able to get clear of the carnage that was caused by Ankano. She cannot be saved or revived, and players aren't even given the option of seeing her body or picking up any souvenirs to remember her by. Number 8. Lee Everett, The Walking Dead. Lee Everett is introduced as the main protagonist in Chapter 1 of Telltale's The Walking Dead game. Like with other titles from the company, The Walking Dead features numerous QuickTime events that can give the game a few decent role-playing elements. The choices players make whilst in control of him can have some volatile effects on what sort of personality Everett has. However, what remains steadfast is how committed the man is to protecting Clementine. It's that commitment that ends up making his eventual death in Chapter 1 all the more devastating. After suffering a bite from one of the infected, Clementine is forced to handcuff her protector to a radiator to prevent him from suddenly attacking her. But as his condition worsens, players are given the choice of either putting Lee out of his misery with a mercy kill or leaving him to succumb to the effects of the infection. Taking down your main protagonist aside, it is a crushing decision and one that seldom few fans enjoyed having to make. Number 7. Jackie Wells, Cyberpunk 2077. In Cyberpunk 2077, Jackie Wells is shown to be a brash and charismatic mercenary with an insatiable drive to make a better life for both himself and his family. Having played a large role in the original gameplay reveal, prologue, and chapters 1 and 2, he acts as the player's chief companion for the early parts of the game, even writing the mission descriptions in V's journal. However, this entertaining and go-getting badass also finds himself on the receiving end of one of the most devastating deaths in recent RPG releases. Having been recruited for the heist at Konpeki Plaza by Dexter Deshawn, Jackie is fatally wounded whilst trying to escape the hotel. The player and he share an emotional final conversation in the Delamain cab before he finally succumbs to his wounds. Whilst Jackie Wells is unable to be saved, players do have a choice when it comes to choosing where his body is sent. Once Delamain asks players what they should do, you can either choose to not move him, send him to his family, or to Victor Vector's Ripperdoc clinic. Number 6. Vesemir, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. In The Witcher 3, Vesemir is a seasoned Witcher operating out of Kaer Morhen. One of the most experienced fighters, he's the oldest Witcher in the world, and acts as Geralt and Ciri's chief mentor and paternal influence right from the start of the game. During the Battle of Kaer Morhen, where players are tasked with fending off the Wild Hunt, Vesemir and Ciri are the only Witchers left standing after the king's icy explosion rendered everyone frozen. In a valiant last act of heroism, having been pinned by ERVINE, Vesemir stabs him in the abdomen before having his neck stabbed. This final act of bravery might have cost him his life, but it succeeded in triggering Ciri's sound wave explosion, forcing the Wild Hunt to retreat. With the sequence taking place entirely in a cinematic, there's no way of saving this veteran figure. The character's dry wit, wise lessons, and brave acts led him to being given an honored funeral in the game's final emotional scene, with Ciri carrying Vesemir's wolf medallion as a relic. Number 5. MORDIN SOLUS, Mass Effect 3. MORDIN SOLUS is the first inclusion on this list that players have the option of saving, though the hoops players have to jump through to make this happen means that most probably have only ever seen him snuff it in Mass Effect 3. The Solarian scientist is introduced as one of the most level-headed and logical beings in the game, though his quick wit certainly helps make him a fan favorite for the series. The choices players make during a playthrough can influence where Mordin meets his demise, though the most common of these is on the Krogan homeworld of Tuchanka. Having spent the majority of the game searching for a cure for the Krogan genophage, Mordin's story will close with the scientist making one final elevator ride up the exploding Shroud facility to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to ensure his cure is properly dispersed. His final quip of it needing to have been him to do the deed as someone else might have gotten it wrong is a typical quip from the Solarian, though it might just be the final nail needed to trigger a tear or 2, or 12, or a million. Number 4. AERITH, Final Fantasy VII. No list of devastating gaming deaths is ever complete without including Aerith's untimely end in Final Fantasy VII. Both the last of her kind and a humble flower seller in the game, Aerith is one of the game's most charming characters. Compassionate, lighthearted, and a skilled mage in battle, she's easily one of the most beloved party members the series has thrown up. All of this just to make her sudden death at the hands of Sephiroth all the more gut-wrenching to play through. At a time when having any member of the main cast killed off was practically unheard of, Sephiroth initially attempts to entice Cloud into killing this lovable party member. When he refuses, the game's antagonist will take matters into his own hands and kill her himself, with a sword straight through the abdomen. Convoluted hoaxes around being able to revive Aerith became the big video game conspiracy theory following the game's release. But the character's death is as predetermined as they come. Undoubtedly the most devastating moment in the series' history, it's a firm reminder of the stakes in play across the Final Fantasy world. Number 3. SOLAIRE of ASTORA, Dark Souls. Dark Souls is not especially well known for its cast of upbeat and hope-driven characters, which is perhaps why SOLAIRE of ASTORA has made such a splash within the game's community in the years since its release. Regarded as an incredibly skilled warrior, SOLAIRE can be found early on in the game standing on a promontory after the Demon Taurus boss fight. He reveals he willingly became an undead being in order to discover a son of his own. SOLAIRE and his never-ending rays of positivity can be summoned for boss fights as the player progresses through his questline, though sadly this will coincide with him gradually losing faith, and then in turn his own sanity. While it is entirely possible to save SOLAIRE from his grisly end, not opening a certain door and wiping out the parasites in the Anor Londo Cathedral will see the character end up with a nasty-looking insect attached to his head. Players have the option of putting this warrior out of his misery, by which point he'll finally have claimed to have found his son. Number 2. James/Dad, Fallout 3. Fallout 3's primary storyline revolves around players taking control of one of the survivors from Vault 101, who then ventures out into the Capital Wasteland in an effort to locate their father and finish the work he'd started. Having gone missing from Vault 101, James's whereabouts and the nature of his work make for a compelling premise, and the moment where the lone wanderer and their father finally meet is certainly one of the highlight points in the game. However, this reunion ends with a sudden and tragic demise. Having made their way into the Jefferson Memorial in Rivet City during the Waters of Life quest, the Enclave encircles the father and son duo, Urging his son to carry on his work, James floods the room he's in with radiation in an effort to prevent them from getting control of the progress he's made. Depending on the karma between the duo and certain choices players make in the build-up to this moment, things can get pretty tear-jerking. Not only does this valiant death eventually fail in its objective, but it's a tragic end to a relationship that had barely gotten going. Number 1. 2B, NIER Automata. 2017's NIER Automata is an interesting title. A sequel to a spin-off of the Drakengard series, this RPG title requires multiple playthroughs if you want to fully complete it, and it's set in the middle of a proxy war between human-created androids and alien-created machines. One of the protagonists of the game is 2B, an android battling the machines on behalf of the humans. A determined, albeit still kind and compassionate figure, 2B's death in the game might have marked the beginning of the series' downward spiral, but it sure was devastating at the time. Another one of those video game deaths where players are forced to control the character en route to their demise. 2B's final moments are shown with the android riddled with viruses before being ambushed by a group of machines. With their body growing weaker, vision and voice short-circuiting, A2 then appears and mercifully puts the character out of their misery. What gives this death an added dose of gut punch is how 9S is shown arriving barely out of time, forced to watch on helplessly as its companion cries out for them. And that's the end of our very sad list. Oh my goodness, go do something to cheer yourself up right now. But do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other devastating RPG deaths that came out of nowhere. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more gaming goodness. Thanks.